From APM, American Public Media.
The city of Jacksonville presents the Jacksonville Jazz Festival, featuring The Roots, Janelle Monáe, Kool and the Gang, and more. Memorial Day weekend, May 22nd to 25th at Tailgaters Parking in downtown Jacksonville. Information at jacksonvillejazzfest.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Anne Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, parents who've turned their son's tragedy into mental health advocacy. We ask them what keeps them fighting and their fears for their son after they're gone. Then, on the eve of her departure from the racial equity nonprofit 90 Forward, we hear from CEO Kimberly Allen about the experiences that shaped her worldview and the lessons that continue to impact her children. And local students show their mastery of global knowledge. We talk to the Ponte Vedra High School champions. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas are at an impasse. As NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv, three major allies of Israel are calling on the Israeli government to end its latest military campaign in Gaza.
Qatar is hosting Israel-Hamas negotiations. Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani told the Qatar Economic Forum talks, quote, didn't lead us anywhere yet.
We couldn't bridge this fundamental gap.
He says the gap is that Israel wants a partial hostage release deal and temporary ceasefire, and Hamas wants a full hostage release and permanent end of the war. Meanwhile, the leaders of the UK, France, and Canada are calling on Israel to end its latest offensive in Gaza and allow essential supplies in to civilians or face consequences. On Monday, Israel said it allowed a small number of trucks into Gaza with baby food after nearly 3 months of a blockade, and Israel says it will allow in flour, food, and medical supplies. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A new book is alleging that White House staff concealed the declining health of former President Biden when he was in office. The book is called Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Biden's team had told many that the then-president was doing well, but the book's co-author, Alex Thompson of Axios, says interviews with other people close to Biden told a different story.
The one top aide who left the White House said that they intentionally shielded him from other members of the administration, other members of the cabinet, other senior White House officials. The inner circle became smaller and smaller, and this White House official said that was intentional, so that they did not realize the extent of the decline.
He spoke to NPR. Biden disclosed over the weekend he has stage 4 prostate cancer. His office says it appears the disease will respond to treatment. President Trump initially said he thought Biden's diagnosis was very sad, but Trump later said, without evidence, Biden had delayed sharing the information. The U.S. Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to end temporary legal status for 350,000 Venezuelan migrants. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports the move reverses a Biden-era decision.
The Trump administration sought to reverse temporary protected status for Venezuelans after former President Biden extended it in 2023. A federal judge paused the White House's plans a week before protections were scheduled to expire. The Trump administration appealed that decision to the U.S. Supreme Court in an emergency application. The court didn't weigh in on whether the Trump administration could end TPS for Venezuelans permanently. That continues to be litigated in lower courts. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street and pre-market trading, Dow futures are slightly lower. This is NPR.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Downtown Jacksonville will be a hoppin' spot this week. WJCT News 89.9's Sid Hoskinson has the details.
About 1,500 people from around the U.S. and the world are expected to attend the 50th Annual Neighborhoods USA Conference hosted by the city's Neighborhoods Division. The nonprofit NUSA encourages networking and information sharing among neighborhood organizations. That conference starts today and goes through Friday, which is when music lovers will be flocking to town for a Memorial Day weekend of exceptional jazz. The Jacksonville Jazz Festival kicks off Thursday evening with the annual piano competition at the Florida Theater on Forsyth Street downtown. That's followed by 3 days of free live entertainment at Tailgaters Parking on Talleyrand Avenue. This year's headliners are Kool and the Gang, Janelle Monáe, and The Roots, and you can find more information at jacksonvillejazzfest.com. Sid Hoskinson, WJCT News 89.9.
This afternoon in Jacksonville, we're going to have mostly sunny skies with highs in the mid-90s inland, lower 90s along the coast. The East Coast sea breeze will make it to the I-95 corridor, and that could be enough to produce a few showers along and east of I-95. The greatest chance for showers will be south of St. Augustine. Lows overnight will be in the upper 60s to lower 70s with clear skies.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, celebrating the hard work, commitment, and achievements of the 1 in 5 college students who are parents. More at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Anne Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, after 18 years of advocacy and 87 published editorials, the parents of a schizophrenic son say they will fight till the end for a better system of care. Later in the program, we listen to our new WJCT podcast, Kingpins and Catalysts, in an interview with racial equity advocate Dr. Kimberly Allen. But first, my guests have spent almost 2 decades advocating for a child they sometimes struggle to recognize. They are the parents of Greg Marquis, who suffered his first psychological break at age 21 and remains disabled by schizophrenia. Here to tell us about their experience and advocacy are Richard and Kathleen Marquis. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Rick, some people may recognize your names simply because of the frequency that you write editorials to the Florida Times-Union. You've written, I think you said 58 editorials for the Times-Union and a total of 87 as of last week in papers elsewhere. What keeps you at it?
Every time we help our son, and we are capable of helping our son, my wife looks at me and says, what about the people that don't have parents that can do it? And I'll give you a good example. When he was in Chattahoochee State Mental Hospital, they I asked how many people were there. They said over 900. And I noticed we were visiting every week, but nobody else was getting visitors. So I said, do they ever get visitors? They said 95% of the people in there had been there for years and had never had a visitor. And the parents can't, we can do it, so we do it. But she does better than I do, and I rely on her. She's fantastic right arm.
Kathy, this has been obviously an incredibly difficult experience for your family. Greg is your only son.
Correct.
And it has been a long time of advocacy for better mental health resources. How do you stay in, a posture where you're willing to continue?
A lot of it has to do with placing it in God's hands in prayer and other people praying as well. Also, we find that the reason why we think, and we don't have, of course, don't know that this happened to our family, is because that way we can help others who have these same types of issues. And we try to remember our son the way he was, not the way he is really right now, because he was an Eagle Scout. He um, learned sign language. He was a counselor for a young child with ADHD. He was in drama all 4 years of high school. So, in other words, there was the before Greg, who was very active in athletics and sports and so on, and then there's the Greg today. So, we try to remember some of the very special things, and we also find that other people who have sons and or daughters the same age are the same. They try to remember the other person. It's like they're two different people in a way.
And you, I know, in addition to those other accomplishments, I mean, Greg was in college when this happened. He was on a very significant scholarship. He was an accomplished, student. He was a very capable kid, volunteer, as you say. Rick, tell us a little bit about your family, because I know that one of your messages is, if this could happen to you, this could happen to anyone.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Every time I talk to somebody, anybody, about what we're going through with our son, inevitably they go back and say, well, my daughter, but we haven't ever talked about her, or my son, or nephew. Every family seems to be touched, because 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people is going to need mental health therapy in their lifetime. And as for schizophrenia, 1 in 100 people is schizophrenic. And I do want to point out, they did a screening after his first Baker Act, and all subsequent Baker Acts, drugs were never there. So he did not do this to himself. It's just, it hit him. Our number came up.
And it really came out of the blue. Describe to us what happened on that day when, Greg, I guess, was just driving really on the highway when this sort of manifested. Can you tell us what happened on that day?
Yeah, this nightmare started with a phone call at 3:15 a.m. From I always refer to as a Good Samaritan. She saw Greg and was talking to him at a rest stop on I-95. Greg was trying to find his way home, but he was lost, so he pulled into the rest stop. When she put him on the phone with me, he said he was bleeding from his eyes, ears, and nose, which he wasn't, and that all the truckers were throwing boxes off the back of their truck in front of his car, trying to run him off the road. So, so he said I was constantly having to weave to keep from getting hit by these boxes. This sort of thing's very common when they have their first psychotic episode. I mean, it's a scary, dangerous thing.
And so he thought he was being targeted. He, really did have these classic signs of a schizophrenic break, and he was diagnosed after that, in addition to another diagnosis that came at the same time that in some ways complicated his condition.
Asperger's syndrome.
Asperger's. And
Yes,
so,
that came to the forefront when he went psychotic. So, yeah, he has dual condition.
yeah. And this, as you've said in your letters to the editor, really was a shock for you. You have, you spent most of your early career in the military. You then worked many years as flying planes for FedEx and
Correct.
also managing. You were a teacher for
Correct.
decades, including at the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind.
Right, in the blind department. One of the things I would like to bring up is the stigma that's been attached, because initially we didn't tell a lot of people what was going on. And as we came to find out, people that we knew, we had no idea that they had someone in their family. For example, where we live now, our next door neighbor's sister has it. Down the street, our neighbor, their son has it. 1 block over, another woman's son has it. And when they all find out that there's someone else involved that they can talk to about it, it gives them some comfort to be able to say, I have this going on. What are you doing about it? How are you handling it? things like that.
What do you think people don't understand about having a child with schizophrenia?
Can I have that one?
Yes, you may.
I've heard it said that mental illness comes from bad parents. So my response to those people is, do you also think Alzheimer's is caused by bad children? How can you ignore a brain disease, the most complicated organ of the body, but accept heart, liver, kidney disease? I mean, it's just, and yeah, we've been shunned for years. It's rough, but that's why we stand up to it. I'll give you a good example. What she does to get me to stand up to it. When I'm looking down, she knows I'm getting depressed. She said, "No time for self-pity. Go write another article, or better yet, go harass a politician." So that's what I've written more politicians than I've written editorials. But
I think, in addition, I'm sorry for
yeah, sure,
interrupting,
go
but
ahead.
in addition, we also find that there are no facilities for people like our son that are not substandard. Um, the hospitals, the one that he was in McClenny, which is now called Northeast State Hospital, it's in very pitiful shape. Um, they need to do so much that we need lots of money coming in from the state to support these hospitals and the staff because they don't get paid very much. It's like you don't have them stay a long time in one job. They move on to something more secure.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Richard and Kathleen Marquis. We are talking about their son who has schizophrenia. If you have questions or comments, you can join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I want to ask you, she's talking about hospital staff turnover, but certainly the turnover that your son as a patient experienced has been really, I think, nothing short of astonishing. He would go in and receive treatment and become stabilized and then be released. Can you explain that pattern and why that was so difficult for you as a father?
It's called revolving door, where they just keep going back to the hospital. They bring them in. They're limited to 72 hours. They've got to release them within 72 hours or get a judge to declare that they're a danger to themselves or others. So we were trying to keep him in because the meds weren't working right. They'd kept increasing him, but it just wasn't working. And but my question to them was, if I had a heart condition and I came to the hospital, I could stay here 30 days if I needed it. Why is mental illness different? Why do they have to come out in 72 hours? And they made us take him one time, and I came and picked him up, and I said, he's not stable. On the drive home, he was screaming at me. He was just agitated, constant body motion. It just was awful. And I really was wondering if we were going to get home okay, because he has taken me on one time.
And so you knew he wasn't stable. You could make that case, but it wasn't enough to get him in a permanent treatment facility. Is that just because Florida doesn't have the space?
Yes, as far as I can. They don't have the funding. They don't have the space. And Northeast Florida is kind of in a hard spot because they don't have the doctors. There just aren't that many people that go into this field in Northeast Florida. So that makes, see, our son right now, we had to put him in an assisted living facility in Tampa. That's the closest one we could get that we thought would work. So it's just brutal, and always worrying about if he has to move, where is he going next? That sort of thing's always on our mind.
Or whether he'll have a place to go. I mean, the possibility that he could end up, homeless, like a lot of people do, is a real possibility. It is required a great deal of your personal resources to keep him in a safe place.
Yeah, and of course, we're always looking to the end. We've set up trust funds and things for him, but it's the day-to-day thing. Where he is now, what made the difference for him is he has 3 friends there that are ballpark his age that have the same problem. So they're all 3 buddies, and they do video games and do stuff together. He hasn't, the isolation he has experienced has been staggering. I mean, he's had friends he hadn't seen in years now. They don't know how to deal with it, so they don't. It's tough.
Kathy, tell me a little bit more about how this has been for you as a family financially.
I can't say that for us, particularly financially, it's been as difficult as we know it has been for other people that have no pensions. Um,
You have resources enough to bear it, but it is not by any chance, how you envisioned your golden years.
No.
Not at all. And I think that one of the things for me is, and probably for a lot of others too, is remaining patient with your loved one with a mental health issue. Because they say things, and sometimes you wonder where in the world did that come from. But then, if the medications aren't correct, sometimes they still do hear voices that are saying things to them that we don't know what's going on.
I've heard him calling "shut up." I thought he was talking to me. I said, I'm not saying anything." He said, "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the voices." And what he explained to me, the voices will say things to him like, "You're no good. You have no future. You might as well end your life." And it gets scary with that. But when he says "shut up" to the voices, they'll shut up. But if he's not medicated, the voices will not shut up. And then that's when it gets dangerous because they don't know what the voices are telling them. In fact, I made that point with the St. John's Sheriff's Department. I gave the opening lecture on what it's like to deal with our son. And I just said, don't get too close to him, and keep in mind that you're not the only ones talking to him. The voices are talking to him, and you don't know what the voices are saying. And if the voices say they're going to try to kill you, charge the police, he'll do it if he's that bad. And he's been that bad.
Yeah, he's broken a lot of items when he's been in one of these situations, like throwing them on the floor, throwing them out the window, things like that. But that's, I think, not uncommon for people that have this particular diagnosis.
And as you say, I mean, sometimes the possibility that they're threatening suicide, or that they're urging him to that has been a real fear as well.
Oh yeah, he's charged the police twice, asking them to shoot him, and on the last one they had to drop him with a taser. So that's when they use a taser, the next choice is their service weapon. So that was very dangerous, scary stuff.
And so I know that sometimes the op-eds that you write they show a photograph of Greg as a young boy with a little puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a couple of other photos, very few. Can you explain why you don't have more photos of your son?
Yeah. Like I said, this is going to be rough, this show. But these are the questions that need to be asked. We went out to get away for a while. He was at home alone, and the voices were coming from behind the family pictures. And the voices were saying, "I can see you through the eyes of the picture." So he took the frame apart and took a penknife and cut the eyes out of all the pictures. So we don't have that many pictures left. So that's why we had to go with the young ones. I mean, yeah. But, if you think that's bad, I talked to somebody that he said, "Oh, I can top that." Our son, when we weren't there, was hearing voices behind the sheetrock in the walls. So he started kicking in sheetrock. And he kicked in almost the entire house. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars in damage. But the problem is, and a lot of parents can't accept it. You got to hang on to the fact it's not who they are. This is not them. I mean, everybody I've heard discuss it says when the onset, it's like a flip of a switch. One day you know your son, and the next day you don't. When we went to visit him in the hospital after that first Baker Act, I went in and talked to him. I came out and I said, "Kathy, I don't know who he is. This is not our son. This is very scary." And we were almost hoping it'd be drugs because then we could fight the problem. But schizophrenia, there's no cure for schizophrenia. You treat the symptoms, but you're not going to cure it, not yet.
Kathy, this is obviously difficult for families when something like this happens. A lot of couples aren't able to withstand it, and a lot of families fall apart. People get divorced. How are you able to, withstand that pressure? How do you work against that, just kind of the divisive aspects of dealing with someone in your life who's so damaged in some ways?
Well, one of the things I do is a lot of volunteer work, and I try to keep my mind going in a positive direction. And we are in a couple of organizations, and one being Patients Not Prisoners, which is an organization that is really very, very important. It's a nonprofit, it's new to the area. We're trying to make life more bearable for the families as well as mm, the the loved ones who are having those issues. So I guess that plus being married to a man who's always been very supportive of me and everything I've done in the classroom, and um, I've tried to be supportive of him as well. And having a good marriage and communicating. I think the communicating is very, very, very important.
46 years she's been putting up with me. When you have a third grade school marm marry a Navy carrier pilot, you know there's going to be some bumping and grinding, but those were great years. We've had good lives together, and it's just this is the end, and we just have to carry the torch as long as we can.
Honestly, our son got his degree in hospitality and tourism, and he has been himself all over the world. He was in exchange in France. He went with his college group to Europe, and with us, he's been to England, Scotland, Wales, many, many countries. And to me, history comes alive by seeing it, not reading it in the books. And so he has had lots and lots of experiences like that. Sometimes I wonder how much of those memories he still has from the past, because I know he had some really good experiences growing up.
What is it you hope most that your advocacy could affect in terms of change?
The biggest problem, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness supports this, the biggest problem is stigma. It truly is, because people are afraid to ask for help because they're embarrassed by it. My son, I took notes from him, and he was talking about the life of a schizophrenic in one of the op-eds, and he was just talking about people just were afraid of him, back away from him, and he just feels like there's no connection. Well, NAMI says we've got to educate people rather than have them just believe whatever they want to believe. It's so that's what we're trying to do.
And we are now, for people on the live stream, seeing the very few photos that you do have of your son, including that one of him as a young boy.
Shiloh the dog.
Oh, Shiloh the dog, yeah. And a handsome high school picture there. I just want to ask you in the few minutes that we have left, Mark, I know that, you talk about the fact that you've been doing this advocacy for so long and you won't be here forever. What do you think about in terms of, what happens to Greg years down the line?
I've written about this more than once. I refer to it as the parent's ultimate dilemma. We will be there for our son for the rest of our lives. We will not quit. We will not give up. This will be our swan song. But our fear is, and everybody we talk to in the same situation has the same fear, that who's going to be there for our children after we've passed on, because it isn't going to be the state of Florida. And I'm 78 years old. I'm flat running out of time to get him set up, and that weighs heavy on me. I've got to get him set up before I go. So we're getting down to the wire.
Statistically, in Florida, we are number 49 or 50 out of the states, 49 or 50, back and forth. So we're at the bottom of what we do for mental health in this state. Not only for places for them to live, but for people to work with them. There's a shortage of everybody in the caregiving aspect of it.
And we should say, he does receive a disability check that goes in its entirety to the facility that he stays
Correct.
at. And you
Every
even
penny.
have to supplement even that.
I have to supplement that.
Because that's not enough. And obviously you're in a fortunate position that you are able to supplement that.
Right.
But not everybody.
So we're hanging in there.
Now, he does have a service dog, but his service dog is with us because the facilities so far have not had fences. So, and the hospital, he was able to see his dog one time. That was, we should have had a picture of that so that you could have seen how wonderful. And I will show it to you before we leave, but the smile on his face seeing his dog.
Well, Richard and Kathleen Marquis, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks for your advocacy. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us. You're helping us get the word out, so I'm not screaming at the rain as much as I usually am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming up next, I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Kimberly Allen for an episode of our new podcast, Kingpins and Catalysts. You may not have had a chance to listen yet, but since it is nearly the eve of Dr. Allen's departure, we thought it was a good time to listen in. We pick it up with the interview in progress. Let's take a listen. How would you describe your childhood in Jacksonville, and what was your first understanding of racial identity as a young person?
It's interesting, and I don't get to tell this story often, but I grew up with a very positive sense of what it meant to be Black. Because I believe, and I don't know if this was an intentional effort of my family, but we were very protected in terms of where we lived, where we went to school. I said I spent a lot of my days out east. I grew up on the north side. I attended an elementary school from kindergarten to fifth grade that was probably 99% African American. It was always a moment of pride to be considered Black for me. And so when I actually went to middle school, I went to James Weldon Johnson Middle School. The school was so much more diverse. And that was where I had the realization that, oh, there are other definitions of what it means to be Black here in this community. And for the good and bad of it, some interactions with peers, interactions with some interesting educators and folks at the time, I learned very quickly what that meant. It was getting a different understanding of how others saw me as a young Black girl from the North Side.
And that was something you experienced not just from peers, but from teachers in the classroom?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. But I feel like I still emerged from that with a very positive and healthy sense because I still had my family. My family has always been really important to me. And what they said about me has always mattered more than what anybody else has ever said about me.
You work in the space of racial equity and you know how to talk about it in a way that isn't inflammatory, but anybody changing schools at that age has a difficult adjustment. How did that change you, that experience, in terms of how you viewed people of other races, or if at all, how you viewed yourself?
I think how I viewed myself, I questioned myself a lot. I questioned, quite frankly, in full transparency, like, am I smart enough for this? Is this the right place for me? Can I get through this? There were times it was tough. And I also intentionally sought my tribe. So I didn't make a lot of friends with people outside of my race. I intentionally sought relationships, honestly, kind of clamoring for what I had left behind from my elementary school, where those were some of my best friends from kindergarten to fifth grade. So I gravitated towards other Black kids. It was an awkward sixth grade for sure. When I thought about people who were not Black, it was more so that I just didn't think about them.
What would you say to like an 11 or 12-year-old Kimberly Allen at this point, if you could?
I'd say relax. As challenging as the moment is, really sort of sit back and take it all in and make sure that you know that you are enough in any and all of those situations. Don't be afraid to speak up. I was really quiet in sixth grade, probably more quiet than people probably expected and certainly expect now. But not being afraid to be vocal. You are smart enough. You are good enough. And you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Honestly, there was a bit of a defining moment in high school for me. I remember my senior year, we were in a history class and someone said, I don't even remember what the discussion was this day, but the words that this young lady said stood out to me and they still stick with me. And she said something to the effect of, why would we send aid to Africa, like as in like the U.S.? Why would the U.S. send financial resources to Africa? They're all going to die of AIDS in 5 years anyway. And I remember I walked out of the class. I looked at my friend and I walked out of class that day.
In the middle of class?
In the middle of class, I got up and walked out. My teacher came out and was like, I'm sorry. She said that, do you want her to apologize? And I said, I don't never want anyone to apologize to me for saying what's really in their heart. And so I went back to class and, I don't even remember if anything came of it. I don't remember talking to her again. I don't remember if the teacher said, I don't know if he said anything when I walked out. I don't know what happened. But for me, that was a moment of the fact that this sort of ideology exists. Like somebody has to do something somewhere about it. And so going to Florida State and trying to understand how people thought. So I majored in psychology. I did some classes in sociology. I took public policy classes, public health classes, because I wanted to understand as much as I could about how people came to think the things that they thought.
It's interesting when you talk about that instance that happened when you were in high school and what that student said and your reaction, because it seems that there's a bit of a through line there in terms of your position, that you don't want people to hide what their beliefs are and you don't want to be told something else. You want to help people acknowledge where they are, wherever that is, and then talk to them about it.
Right. I don't think we get anywhere by forcing people to wear a facade. I don't want a fake apology. I don't want something insincere. You spoke what felt true to you. Right. And if in that moment I was not who I am today and let me help you grow and understand better, that was not where I was at the time. But over time, I have developed a knack for helping people get there because I know that there are more people who are like I was and they're not in the space to help teach and grow folks. We don't have the patience. There's just, it's too much. We get heated. Right. But I've developed a level of patience, I think, intolerance for, okay, here's where you are. At least if you're willing to hear something different, we can have an exchange. And I'm not trying to get you from point A to Z in a 2-hour conversation. But if you're open, I'd love to develop a relationship with you and show you something different.
How do you think your view of Jacksonville from the time that you were young and living in that somewhat insular world and somewhat protected, as you say, how has your view of Jacksonville changed in the years since then and now that you're an adult?
It almost kind of makes me sad in some ways because when I hear some of the narrative, for example, about Northwest Jacksonville or the East Side, that's not my memory actually. And I just said this in another space. The safest I have felt in my life has been on the East Side, has been on the North Side, the safest I felt. And so when I hear some of the narrative that these places are not safe or these places are endangered, it's really disheartening because I know for a fact that there are what we are describing certainly is at what I believe a systems level of issues that are happening. But the individuals and the people that are there are just like everybody else from all over the place. And I think the more we can connect people to people, we'll start to see that more. And I will say there is a significant need to address the systems that have allowed some of the outcomes and things that we know to be true in those communities as well, that we have to action policies that are going to address those things. What we have done, I think, as a society that we have seen these outcomes and we have said that those people, whoever those people are, don't want better, versus saying there is something at play here that is impacting these people that we really need to address. And we've dehumanized them in so many ways. And I think my personal goal is that we return the humanity to those communities and allow them to help drive the solutions. Because again, to the same token of I don't want a false apology or sort of this facade of an interaction. I also don't want you to guess at how you should treat me. And so I think the same for these communities. We shouldn't be guessing about how to solve their problems or the issues that they face. They live there. They live in their skin. They live in their communities every single day. They see their challenges. We should be taking our cues from them, period. and returning the humanity and the dignity to them that they deserve, and respect the expertise that they have as the drivers of their lives.
You have 4 children now.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of mom are you? How do you parent, and how does the work that you do impact or interplay with how you parent?
That's an interesting question. I think that I'm a relatively calm parent, but I expect excellence from my children. And my children they are beautiful and they are brilliant. I really do harp on them about just life skills. I'm not worried about their classroom behavior. I'm not worried about their grades because they knock that out of the park every time. I want to make sure that you know how to be a good human being, that you know how to self-regulate, that you know how to speak up for yourself. Like all of those things that I try to impart on them. My children have encountered things that I wish that I could have provided them an environment like the one I grew up in, a protected environment where they had an opportunity to solidify the positivity of their Black experience before they were exposed to how other people think of them. Because very early on, they are experiencing things much earlier than I did with, being called outside of their name, being called racial epithets, having their hair touched without consent, in all of these things that they are experiencing far younger than I am, that just like the experience I described to you stayed with me from all those years ago, these experiences are going to stay with them for their lives. And so I do my best to surround them with as many positive Black influences as possible, because I know that they need it. And I know that indeed will help carry them and refute the negative things that they might encounter about themselves that others perceive. I don't want my kids I don't parent from a place of fear. I parent from a place that they are thriving and that they will thrive. And it's my job to make sure that their environment is also pouring into them positively so that they thrive.
Is there a particular instance that you're comfortable talking about that you experienced or shared with them in terms of their early exposure to things that were happening in the world?
Yeah. So my oldest came home when he was 2, and he told me he was Black. He's at daycare. He's not at school. He told me well, yeah, you are Black, as a matter of fact, but who told you that? And what was the context in which they told you that? My oldest in 3rd grade has also been called the N-word several times. My oldest daughter has people who were like, "Oh, your hair is so fluffy," and they just want to like touch her hair. It's so different. They touch her hair without her permission. I've had instances in daycare where the kids would put dirt and things from the playground in my girl's hair because it stays in their hair. I've had instances where my girls have been talked about because they're darker skinned. We're talking a 5, a 9, and an 11-year-old who have already had these experiences that we have to explain to them as parents, to say, again, that piece about advocating for yourself. Say, no, don't do that. Don't touch my hair. Don't put things in my hair. Don't call me the N-word. As a matter of fact, don't use any sort of, don't tell me racist jokes at all. Like, we have very intentional conversations, and we tell them there's a way that you can address these things. You don't have to be rude or disrespectful to advocate for yourself. But you need to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, they will think these things are okay. And if you're okay with them, then you and I need to have a discussion, because I'm uncomfortable with it. So, and it's them talking to their teachers and things like that too.
I mean, I want to ask you that because you're helping them in a situation, and those are very difficult situations, but you help them, and then you also have to process. So how do you cope with that as a mom?
I am a mama bear, so I am first angry. And that's just as honest as I can be. I'm angry first, and I want to understand, okay, tell me the whole story so I can make sure I'm not overreacting to what you're telling me happened. And then I get frustrated at the situation, and then I get frustrated again at a system that says we shouldn't even be talking about these things in school. And I say, well, if we don't want our kids to learn history in its true form, but they can say these words and not understand them, to me, that is a misalignment of values and mission, because my kids are being taunted with these things. And I have to come home and do a lesson with them about you're beautiful. Your skin is just as sun-kissed and beautiful as it is intended to be. You are not what they said you are. You are, and I will say your name, you are this person. You are my son, my daughter. You are our children. So you are brilliant. You are bright. You are, I have to do those affirmations with them so that they know. And then my husband and I have to go and have pillow talk about how frustrated we are. And if we need to take another step and we need to go to the teacher, do we need to go to administrators? And for the most part, our kids have been really good about, no, we will, have this conversation with the person. They really are good about that before we have to step in. But they're, again, 5, 9, and 11. They shouldn't have to be advocating for themselves about that.
Well, and to your point about what's being taught in the classroom, the idea governing the recent changes being we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. We don't want anyone to be hearing lessons that might make them feel lesser than. But that occurring in a context in which obviously those lessons are being taught extracurricularly to students of color in many cases.
Yeah. And history taught at an age appropriate level does not have to be uncomfortable. Kids are very curious. And they're very resilient. We are putting our adult lens on children who are just naturally wanting to know more.
Do you bring your work home with you?
All the time. All the time.
You've been executive director since 2021, which was a very interesting time to take that role. It seemed at that time we were in a period of really great momentum, or at least kind of a serious reckoning on race. And since then, there has been, I think a lot of people would agree, a backlash, some of it legislative, some of it just sort of philosophical or out there in the ether. And I would imagine your role has whipsawed a bit in terms of the conversations you were being invited to have and now perhaps are being told you can't have.
It has been an interesting journey to certainly watch the response, to watch the pendulum swing from where everybody was sort of all in this moment. And we really do want to know better, know more, know better, know people and policies and things differently. And to see where we are now, because whether it's because of policy, whether it's just because it felt like too much was changing at one time, whatever the reason is, it has been a challenge to see sort of the regression or the withdrawal from this work. But somebody, Dr. Gail Christopher, did a talk with the Jacksonville Urban League a couple months ago, and she said the progress is actually still happening. If we zoom out, the progress of what was quote unquote started with George Floyd is actually still happening, but the places where we're situated, like a Jacksonville right now, or in Florida, where it seems like all of these policies are coming out against it, it seems like it is really dampening down the impacts. But if we zoom out and look at a macro level, changes is still happening. People, communities are still marching forward with initiatives, with ideas, with work that is going about achieving racial equity. Watching my team and my board work endlessly to fulfill this mission is rewarding. And the spaces and places where we are still welcomed and invited is encouraging. And I have said from the very beginning, even if there are folks who start the journey with us or they start out on this train and they get off, we will make sure that there is a door always still open for them, because this is a process and the process is not always linear for people. There are folks who get intimidated, maybe get their feelings hurt sometimes, maybe it gets uncomfortable and awkward, it becomes unpopular, they retreat. The time will come again where the knowledge that's been imparted will tickle you in the right moment. You'll come back. The door will always be open for that. there is always an opportunity for what I would consider redemption or transformation. Even if you decide to ignore it for now, you will be reminded. And when you are reminded, there is always space and grace.
Well, Dr. Kimberly Allen of 90 Forward, thanks so much for doing this.
I appreciate it, Anne. Thank you.
Join us for Film at WJCT Studios on Wednesday, May 21st for a timeless night of music and film. It's a special screening of the jazz masterpiece, Jazz on a Summer's Day. Filmed at the 1958 Newport Jazz Festival, this beautifully restored classic features performances by Louis Armstrong, Thelonious Monk, Anita O'Day, and Mahalia Jackson. Join us Wednesday, May 21st. Doors open at 6:30, film at 7. Don't miss this night of jazz, soul, and cinematic history. Visit WJCT.org/film for tickets.
I'm Scott Tong. A new documentary examines how Russia's neighbors are preparing for the threat of aggression after Ukraine and the global consequences if Russia wins its war. We'll speak to the director of Putin's Endgame, The Stakes Beyond Ukraine, next time Here and Now.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
For decades, kids in St. Louis County caught crawdads in Coldwater Creek. They made mud pies and went swimming and were exposed to nuclear waste.
If you live in North County, you can see the effects of this waste on the health and well-being of the community.
The little-known story of how St. Louis, Missouri became the dumping ground for nuclear waste generated by the Manhattan Project. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
Reading scores in the U.S. dropped to a new low in 2024. Progress fell 2 points on average for both 4th and 8th graders. But 2 states are bucking this trend, Mississippi and Louisiana. What have they done to turn their literacy rates around? And what can other states learn from them? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Some local students showcased their knowledge of global expertise at the recent National Academic World Quest competition in Washington, D.C. Here to tell us about it are 4 students from Ponte Vedra High School. I am joined by 11th graders Aiden Killen and Star Benjamin. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
And seniors Ariana Ramathula and Ella York. Good morning.
Hi, morning.
So thanks for being here and congratulations to all of you. It's a big win. You went to D.C. in April on the 28th after taking first place here at the 20th annual Jonathan Howe Academic World Quest competition. Those are both events that are hosted by the World Affairs Council. So, Ariana, first of all, what are you being tested on?
We're being tested on different topics about global affairs. So there are focus topics ranging from Mexico as a country to music and globalization, indigenous peace building, space, minerals in Africa. And then at the national level, there are additional topics on current affairs, which is sort of random. And you get articles that the World Affairs Council provides to study for those topics.
And are these things that you come to with a great deal of knowledge, or are you studying and preparing intensively?
It was definitely a lot of studying. I think we all studied as a team. It was months of work.
Yeah. And so, Ella, you went to D.C. You placed 5th in this national competition. You must feel pretty good about that showing. I mean, that's an extraordinary...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been competing. This is my 3rd year competing at the local competition. And
I've always wanted to win, obviously, and be able to go on that trip to DC. And being able to do it in my senior year was just really awesome. And I've got a great team here with me. And so that was a very, very special experience. And the trip to DC was incredible. One of the coolest experiences I've ever had. So.
Because you weren't just confined to the competition, you actually got to do some exploring.
We did. It was fantastic. We got to go to the Shakespeare Library, which was very cool. None of us had ever been there before. We got to do a tour of the UAE embassy. I had never been inside of an embassy before. And we just had a really great experience. Got to speak with the Mexican ambassador to the U.S., which was very cool. A lot of very, very cool people that we got to meet, fellow competitors. So we made some really, really cool memories and some lasting friendships.
Aiden, was that trip to the embassy a highlight for you, or what was your favorite thing?
I would have to say it would 100% be the embassy. I mean, it's literally a palace in the middle of DC. I mean, it just jumps out at you. I love walking along the embassy row. But it really does stand out. And it was so cool to go inside, and it was like stepping into another world. And we got to meet all these amazing people who worked at the embassy, from people who worked in the environmental departments and economic departments and the cultural departments. And we just really got to understand the deeper inner workings of how an embassy ran, which is going to really help us in our later career paths.
And so what is your later career path? I mean, you are now a junior, and so you've got another year, but what are you looking towards?
Actually, I would love to enter the professional global affairs environment. I would love to be a diplomat or an ambassador or somewhere I can go around the world and help people. And I know some of my other team members feel the same.
Star, how about you? What is it that you want to do with your kind of global affairs understanding and knowledge?
I mean, I think we're mostly on the same page with wanting to go into diplomacy, partly because it's just such an interesting topic, but then also because the World Affairs Council and a few other programs like it have given us such opportunities to explore that field. It's just been really incredible to get to see that, and it's definitely sparked a passion in a lot of fellow students as well as myself.
Yeah, and certainly a lot of interesting topics. It's also a really difficult area, right? I mean, global diplomacy, there's more challenges now than perhaps ever. You know, it really is something that you have to go into with an understanding of negotiation and an ability to work with other people on very difficult subjects. Is that the kind of thing that you feel like this has trained you to do a little better?
Yes, absolutely. One thing I will say when I see that difficulty is that it's obviously a very harsh subject, but the students I find who even have a minor interest in it, once they connect to these kinds of programs, once they're able to talk to other people with similar interests, they flourish in it and they are able to expand their knowledge so vastly, so quickly. It's incredible.
And Ariana and Ella, you are both seniors, and so you're kind of jumping into the next level pretty soon. What are you going to do next? What are your college plans?
I am going to Georgia Tech. I'm actually a little bit different from my teammates here. I'm going into computer engineering.
Excellent.
And so this was really interesting to me from sort of the tech aspect, and understanding how different global factors affect like resource availability when we're making new technology and supply chains. That part was really interesting for me. But yeah, I'm going to Georgia Tech next year, and I'm really excited.
Congrats. How about you, Ella?
I'm very excited. I'm going to Notre Dame, so go Irish.
Right.
I am planning to major in global affairs, so everything that the World Affairs Council does this year has been completely up my alley. And this competition was just a really great way to do really a deep dive into some little more niche topics that most people don't have a super deep understanding and knowledge of. And that was very, very helpful in just having a greater understanding of how the world works as a whole. And I'm very excited to be able to use that knowledge as a global affairs major. I'm very excited for that.
Well, it is a great accomplishment. Star, Aiden, Ariana, Ella, they are the champs of the National Academic World Quest competition in D.C. in April. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. Our executive producer is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Coram. And our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. If you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. Join us tomorrow when we discuss a new documentary about one of the most influential political thinkers in history, Hannah Arendt. I'm Anne Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. DuPont Counseling Group is a team of therapists, psychiatrists, and counselors available to help with life's mental health challenges. Everyone needs help sometimes. More information can be found at jacksonvillecounseling.org.